Hi everybody, it's John in York. Do let me know when you can see, and of course indeed hear me. Let me know on the levels if you've just dropped in. So no chat has popped up as yet, but do let me know if it's coming through to you loud and of course, as they say, clear. So hopefully there's somebody out there that's going to reach out. Hello Catherine, hello Mitzi. How lovely to have you on board the good ship. John from York. Hello Tricia. Hi Ronnie. Good to see you. Hope you're keeping well. You can see me soon. Thank you for letting me know. That's good. That means the river level hasn't come up as high as we thought. That's great. You've seen it clearly. So hope we're all keeping well. Bit of a cold one here in York today. See, I'm bundled up. Hi Nathalie. How are things in the Netherlands? Is it any warmer than it is here? It's barely scratching into sort of much above single digits here. So, because of hello Leslie. How are things in London? Hope the weather's a bit better where you are. It's a bit grey today. A little bit of sun coming out, but hopefully it'll stay dry for the tour. Hello, Catherine. I hope you are keeping well. We'll be starting in... we'll start in a second, actually. Getting cold here, too. Well, I suppose it's autumnal. Christmas markets are open, so I guess it's all part of the experience this time of the year. So welcome on and all. You are live joining me here in York, in of course, Yorkshire, in Northern England. And we're going to go for a wander. I haven't got a particular... focus for today. I want to talk a little bit about... I'll hold that back. But first, I thought we'd talk about an anniversary because one or two of you have kind of reached out, left messages about 46, not very warm in Washington then, Polly, about flooding. You'll have seen flooding in the media again. And I'm just going to flick the camera over so you can have a look at where we are now. We're down by the river here in York. So I'll just show you. So that's kind of where we are now. I think it peaked early this morning. It is pretty chilly, Laura, but we've still got pretty decent kind of floodwaters. But I thought I would talk to you about an anniversary of a series of events which culminated 25 years ago, I think last week here in York, which was the November 2000 floods. And just to be like a slight sort of scene setting, the autumn of the year 2000, almost kind of wherever you were in kind of northern and western Europe, was the kind of wettest on record. It was the wettest autumn that in the United Kingdom since records had begun in 1766. So, of course, could have been wetter previous to that, but obviously we don't know. That's when the record started. And kind of several regions of Atlantic Europe, from France to Norway, had received double the amount of rainfall there. So you had severe floods, landslides, and there's also kind of unseasonably warm temperatures on the Atlantic. So as this kind of weather fronts were passing over the sea, they were absorbing lots and lots of kind of moisture kind of coming up. So it all kind of led up to what you might call a humdinger in and around the kind of first week of November 2000, so 25 years ago. And hello, Gail. I've kind of got some photographs because I know you kind of like the drama of floods. So they knew it was coming, and so what they decided to do was do some kind of sandbagging. So this is under one of the bridges. That's Lendl Bridge, which is obviously pointing that direction. But you can see here, this is the Environment Agency trying to build the flood defences because they knew we had this massive flood kind of on the way. And they did a great job. Unfortunately, when obviously the floods began to recede, the weight of them, the water, was so heavy they actually began to buckle and force open the floodwaters. So whilst they protected the city, ultimately they became a huge problem just because you imagine the sheer weight of this kind of waterlogged massive kind of sandbags. So we'll get rid of that one. This is pretty near to where we are now. That's about 2 or 3 minutes walk in that kind of direction. And funnily enough, it's very near to a building that I used to work on, North Street. Well, maybe I walked down North Street, where I was the kind of in charge of the building at that time. And unfortunately, all our electrics were coming up, like sockets in the floor. So we had to leave because all the electrics and all kind of went out at the same time on the kind of same morning. So let me find you some more photos of here. So this is, couldn't choose a better name, could you? River Street, very near to here. Other side of the river, you can see there, it's accessed by boats kind of only. So just if you missed the beginning of this, these are images I'm showing you from November 2000. It's 25 years ago. So we're in flood now, but we're in flood then. But this was the highest river levels that we'd seen since the 17th century here in York. So it just kind of sets it in context. We're used to flooding, but this was out of the ordinary. This was a kind of a flood above, as you might say. So I think taken, if not in the same street, then kind of very nearby, you can see the kind of guy walking there, he's coming up to the kind of top of his thighs. So, this was a pretty substantial flood. A few more to show you, and then we'll have a walk into town. This is we're about to kind of walk down now on Clifford Street. So, let's start walking. I'll take some shots over the river, and we'll come back to that picture, and I'll show you where that is when we kind of get to it. It'll take us about 2 or 3 minutes to kind of walk over to there. You had a fireworks disaster that year, Nathalie, in 2000. So obviously this was 2000 was obviously the millennium, wasn't it? And of course, in common with a lot of medievist millennialists, as you might say, in the medieval period, there was a belief that in the year 2000 things could happen. Maybe we could see the second coming of Jesus Christ, or the end of the world. But there was a lot of people saying those kind of portents, wasn't there? The millennium bug, for instance, the kind of an early attempt to kind of save memory by having 2 digits rather than 4 digits for the code, if you remember, was going to blow up our entire kind of IT system of the world. So there was a kind of a lot kind of going on then, and this freakishly bad weather was kind of feeding into this sense of unease and kind of portent that all was not well. But obviously it came down. So we're going to give you another shot across there now. So we've come up the other side. I'll give you a kind of shot across the river. And it always looks to me like a big fat sort of pregnant belly. But I say that in a kind of very positive kind of way. Of kind of the way it kind of spreads and builds its banks. But I'll show you a kind of contrast picture of what we had in November 2000. We'll just get into sort of situ. So it's a sort of fascinating time to be in York insofar as that this, as I say, was the highest that water, to our knowledge, had been since the 17th century. So, lots of people live their lives in York without seeing what we did at that time. So, it's kind of something. So, I'll show you an image in reverse from where we are. So here, so you can sort of see kind of what that level is looking like. And obviously we've got the famous pub. Now, this image is taken from the other side, taken from the other bridge, so bear in mind. And I'll tell you what, if you look straight down the bridge there, that's what that looked like in November 2000. So a good deal higher than it is kind of right now. But let me just find for you, because I've definitely got one. Yeah, so that's what that was kind of looking like in November 2000. So I'll come back off that image in a minute. What you can see is there's no walkway whatsoever. If you look about down the kind of the side of the river, we can't really see the walls. We're looking at really the first floor as being utterly submerged. So as we are right now, you sort of see that high wall and the kind of walkway. So I think that gives you a kind of sense, of quite how much, by contrast, if you like, that has gone up. Is that going to make sense? Let's do that again so you can just sort of see. So that's today. That's as you're looking at it live. And here's another shot of it from a slightly different angle. So this is from the pub onwards. So that's obviously the King's Arms famous pub. So that's kind of the next bridge along where we are now. You can see that's almost up to the kind of top of the windows. So that gives you a sense. So if you look 1, 2, 3, the building in the middle, there's the entire set of windows that's missing there. that's submerged, underneath the water. So I think it really kind of gives you a sense of, quite how high that water was. So that whilst this is pretty high now, in the grand scheme of things, it's this is very much manageable. Does that kind of make sense? I'm not trying to downplay it, because obviously it's not great, if your car, and obviously this car park over here, St George's, it takes a very brave person to park in York during the floods. And of course, November 2000, we've got some pictures that you'd have to sort of put down in the kind of oh dear category. That's just taken just across the road where we are now, so I'll come off that in a second and I'll show you where that was taken. Obviously that has ended up in the river, as you might say. Not ideal. And that is, again, just the next sort of two buildings past the Crown. You might also see some white little flagpoles sticking out. Where that kind of grey boat is, that's just over there. Another fun one, though I suspect it wasn't a lot of fun for the drivers of the car. It just shows, careful where you park here in York, because when the water comes, it comes quickly. So it is. Why? I don't know, Trish. It's a great question. Why do they build car parks by rivers? I guess it's because they don't build buildings there because they flood. Why do people park in them when it's going to flood? I suppose is kind of more of a pertinent question. It's a bit unfair. I'm not going to laugh at people's misfortune, but of course they do make for a good image, do they not? So let's get a walk on. We'll kind of show you the water from this side, round to the castle, and then we're going to look at the castle, have a wander into York, and see what's going on. So again, this we've watched across here kind of many times. So Dill's Bar, Sophie's Bar, is it called now? Not open right now. People park on beaches, they do. So people do dumb things, right? But yeah, if it was me, I would not be parking in that car park. But obviously, you pays your money and you takes your chance. So we can't go down there today. But I'll go and show you where that other photograph was just taken, and I've got maybe 2 or 3 more. So I hope you enjoy this little retro celebration, if that's a celebration, commemoration, is that what it is, of the flood of 25 years ago. I think it was a big one. Big ones in my lifetime, biggest, as I say, since the 17th century, I believe. So consequently, if you think about all the people that have kind of lived in York, all the history that's happened between now and the 17th century, it's a lot of history, right? None of those people saw what we saw, which is kind of cool, right? So if you're in and around York, or if you saw it on the TV, you saw something that they didn't. It was, I think, scary. Yeah, definitely, Ronnie. I mean, definitely, obviously, for the people who had to move out their homes, for obviously people that were kind of worried, because at that time, we'd had a big flood in 1982 where I lived in Bishopthorpe. We had water right at Main Street. There was rowing boats on the Main Street. But that was sort of seen as a once in 100 years. And again, it happened again 18 years later, but even worse. So suddenly where I think people started to go, hang on, there's clearly something going on with the climate, that kind of contributed. And I don't want to kind of get into all that, all the ins and outs of kind of what causes these things. But, consequently, you can't keep saying something's, a once in a lifetime when it happens twice in a generation, can you? So you see here, as ever, the pump mechanisms. And what we do have, by the way, is what they call the Foss Basin, which is sort of over there, the flood barrier, which basically pumps water into the foss. And it ran for a record 17 days in there. That's the longest it ever had to run for. And in the end, it began to sort of fail because there was so much water coming behind it. So that photograph that I showed you a minute ago was taken about here. So again, you can sort of see the castle would have been here, on the right-hand side of this picture. That's just taken, I would think, where's that grey building? It's probably taken somewhere around here. The camera man was probably stood when he took that photograph. So let's see what else we've got that I haven't shown you. So here is then the castle. So this is the street in front of us right now. Obviously, thank you, Elizabeth. That's very kind of you. So we're looking straight down now into Clifford Street. We've got the hotel. So I mean, we'll literally, if I step back probably 20 foot, we're probably stood exactly where the cameraman stood there. The castle on our right-hand side. So down as you can see, there's a castle up there. Look, we've got the hotel. So I'll just come back off that. Just 1 minute. We've got the hotel there. We've got the castle up there. Just go back into that so you can see it one more time. You can see what we're talking about there. So, you know, these are very, very profound and kind of serious sort of floods. And the fact is that York was caught out. It didn't really have the robust systems. There hadn't been the investment into flood planning, whether that be the Environment Agency or the City Council. I'm not looking to single out blame any of these. But the reality was that York was not ready for this volume of water. And it shows. And of course, York's problem being is that because of the kind of the networks of the waterways, everything floods out via the Ouse on its way kind of down to the Humber at the sea. So basically, you get the Swale and the Nid and the Derwent, all these kind of rivers flood. They're all coming into the same river. So consequently, you get these devastatingly high floodwaters. So this is, I think, going to the A64, just near York. Castling it with a moat, absolutely, Susan, as I did first time round. So again, you're getting a sense of the sheer volume of floodwaters. This is the racetrack. So York Racers there, that's Naseby near where I live. That's what that kind of looked like. So I think we've probably done justice to November 2000. We've been talking 15 minutes on it. It's probably good time to go for a wander around York. But I think it's good just to reflect a little bit on these things. They get a history, as you might say. And let's just see if I've shown you all the pictures. I hope you've enjoyed this little trip back into... have I missed anything? Let me just have a look. This is Skeldergate. I don't know if I showed you that one. So Skeldergate's where we started. You know, kind of where we're walking up. So again, if you look at how high the water's coming up, above the waist, I would say, of those emergency service personnel, you've got army trucks in there as well. So yeah. So there we go. That's history. History kind of interesting. Talk about recent history because obviously we talk about so much. Historic history. Well, that's what an awful tautology that is. We talk about history from the long since past, shall we say? Interesting, of course, in this country we have a habit of talking about history as from 1066, which kind of baffled me when I kind of found out. I remember years ago, I've told you this before, I used to have a poster on my wall of kings and queens as 1066, and you kind of just begin to think that there's like the Romans, then you don't quite know what happens in the 1066, then it starts again. And of course, there was, you know, a lot of stuff went on. It's just that we don't really talk about it, we don't really know about it, we don't really understand it. Parts of that are the archaeological record isn't great. Parts of it was there's not much kind of written down. We don't have kind of many stories. But there was certainly kings during that period. It didn't begin in 1066. In fact, our most famous king, if he indeed existed, King Arthur, if he did exist, existed in the period that we would call the Dark Ages, the period kind of after the Romans. So I thought while we were kind of having a little walk around York, and we'll just have a look, and what catches our eye is what catches our eye. And should we walk this way or should we walk? I'll tell you what, we'll walk this way because I'll talk about the castle. We'll have a little talk about this kind of period between the Romans leaving and the Normans coming, because the Normans, if you like, really begin our story in terms of, you know, we've got England, we've got kings and queens from that point, but also, you know, we've got the kind of Christianity, so we get the beginning to the York City of churches. So the city, as we kind of recognise it today, begins really with the Normans. So I thought I'd kind of talk a bit about that kind of period in between. But whatever else catches our eyes, and whatever else we chat about on the way as well, be great. But just before we go, this may well be... Hello, Patty. You have to watch on catch up, because we've been talking about the floods from 25 years ago, but we're about to kind of start on the historic stuff. Just to kind of let you know, this may be one of the last times we come down here before it all changes, because after a lot of sort of debates over the last, 30 years, they finally decided that the car park that's in front of us is going. They are keeping a relatively small area of it for disabled parking, and developing the rest into kind of green space and a flow space, and increasing the green space around the castle. So it's going to be a lot quieter, a lot more kind of peaceful, and a kind of nice place to be. Also a place of kind of commemoration for those that are coming to contemplate and kind of reflect on the massacre that happened here, 1190. There's going to be kind of place, a kind of quiet for that. So play space, I think, for kids. But the big news is that this car park is kind of finally going, which is great. So that's kind of obviously what we've got now. Is this, which is not a great car park, is it really? It's not very visual, not very nice. Space is very tall, surface is really bad. And so we're going from having this kind of just urban sort of to this. So you see the castle at the top there. Obviously you can't see, but obviously I'll turn around and turn the camera off in a minute. We've got the Castle Museum, the courts and so forth kind of behind us. Good for wildlife. Yeah, so regreening, kind of quiet. I mean, hopefully it won't be all people zipping around on them bloody scooters that go far too fast. But no, let's keep positive. I'll come on to whinge about that. But I do think there's going to be an accident one of these days. But anyway, but that's one side. So a place and space for everybody really in the centre that's less about kind of urban driving, do you know what I mean? And is more about walking, cycling and wheeling. So kind of sustainable, green, nice, clean, quiet, peaceful. So hopefully, I think maybe the work's going to start in the new year. So maybe we'll come down and have a look, like we've done with the station, at the work in progress. But I think nice to have a look at that as it progresses. And I think you'll agree that's probably going to be a kind of nice addition for York, really. Better than this. So I think. So tell me that you like it if you do, and I'll pass that on to the council. My friend, your decision makers. There's like a lot of flack because people want to be able to park everywhere, this, that, and the other. So it'll be good to hear and show them some of these comments that from people visiting York, it'll be nice to have a little oasis of greenery. Of course, yeah, we've got park and ride for about 5 or 6 sites around the city. So people aren't going to struggle. There's a car park just over here. There's a multi-storey just in front of us there. You see where it's lit up there? The other side of Phoenix. There's a multi-storey. So cars are going to move from here to there. But of course, it's the end of the world as far as some people are concerned. But they do like to make a fuss, don't they? You know, there's people that you get the sense that if they're allowed to, that they'd make the Minster drive-through. You know, that are just so obsessed with driving. And I drive. I'm not going to be a hypocrite. You know, driving is convenient, of course. But equally, there's a kind of quality of life thing, isn't there, for all of us? And then actually, you know, when we find pedestrianised spaces, we all kind of really enjoy them. So, yeah, we'll do that, Tricia. We'll keep you updated with that. So I'm not quite sure when it's going to start, but quite a lot of change going on at York at the minute. We've got York Central, the big site behind the railway station is kind of being developed, but that, again, it's been taking 20, 30 years. And of course, you know, we've still got, you know, so much history under the ground. What this isn't going to do, of course, is dig it all up, and which would be awesome if they did that. But there doesn't seem to be a plan for it because, of course, this is the area of kind of Viking Central. But I did say we're going to talk about it a bit early, so let's kind of go pre that. So let's talk about. I've told you lots of times about the Romans before and how they left at the beginning of the 5th century. But I really talk about what happens after that. So I'm going to talk a bit of that. So who owns the car park? The car park is owned by the City Council. So on behalf of us, they made the decision to close it down, which I think is the right decision. So if we talk about kind of York's history from kind of about 400 to 600 AD, we tend to talk about it in the name of sub-Roman. And it's one of the most kind of elusive epochs in York's history, insofar as that it's that through the glass darkly, if you know that expression, the Dark Ages, like peering into a dark void, where all we kind of get is kind of whispers and hints and suggestions. Almost all of it, of course, found through archaeological finds. You know, it's not discovered. There's no kind of contemporary maps of the city. There's no buildings. Or there's the Anglian Tower near the Museum Gardens. But you know, there's not a lot of architectural record, obviously. It's a time when kind of Germanic immigrants from Northern Europe, mainly Anglo-Saxons, came to settle in this area. And there's kind of large gaps in our knowledge of York in these days after the Romans. So the Romans, of course, were great because they wrote everything down. They were a highly kind of literate culture. So consequently, coming to the Crusades, I don't know how busy it's going to be today, so I thought we'd just kind of stay a bit on the outskirts of the city and skirt around so we're not kind of absolutely enmeshed in the busiest of the busy. But elements of the Christmas market, and we'll go on a Christmas market tour a little bit later on. Phoenix, Heidi Christmas cards here. Phoenix is a sort of stylish, old-style department stores that we have here in York. All cosmetics on the ground floors, homeware, clothes, and nice things to spend your money on. So yeah, lots of gaps in our knowledge in the days after the Romans, because there's no contemporary written reference exists between the year 314 and then 627. So 627, you probably remember, that's when we get the founding of the Minster. So consequently, we don't have a written record for 300 years. What we do know is we've got mass production of pottery, glass, metalwork, and other items. But that seems to have kind of stopped in the 5th century. So again, the ability to St Mary's Church here, the ability to kind of assess this stuff is based on, of course, digging down and knowing how far down in the levels you need to go. I think we'll walk up Castlegate actually, because it's pretty busy up there. So there's a lack of evidence of kind of habitation, which some speculate means the city was maybe deserted at this period. So what in effect that you get is, obviously when you dig down, you get stratas, don't you? So look, this is a lovely restaurant, by the way, if you come into York, La Rustique, traditional Frank. Isn't that beautiful, the lighting there? So elegant. Next, a Carr house. So John Carr, famous and celebrated architect. Next to it, limited the expo. So this is one of those sort of 360 immersive events. Sorry, I had no theme today. I'm just picking up on your comments. And Lois, what if you dig up the carpet, unearth some historical artifacts? Well, that's very interesting, isn't it? I mean, the fact is they almost certainly will, but it rather depends on the depth. So that's kind of illustrates the issue I was pointing to a minute ago, insofar as that how far down you go is going to, impact on what you find. So, for instance, here's a really good illustration of how street levels have risen. So here we are at the Church of St Mary's on Castlegate, and this is the contemporary street here. Look, as it will look. Proof it is there's my foot, right? But actually, to get into this church, we'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps down. So now we're on the contemporary level of the 13th century, when this church was kind of majorly rebuilt. So that gives you a sense of the depth. So that's about 8 centuries difference. So consequently, it really depends on how deep they dig their kind of footings for any kind of structures as to how far back in the historical record you're going to get. I couldn't have been at a better place, could I, to illustrate that point? But that's York for you. It's an absolute gift and for tour guides, because you don't have to explain it much. We can just show you. You just go, no, here it is. Look, actually, see what, we'll go down here. We'll see if we can have a look in. I'll see if we can get into. We'll go down by the Foss and we'll go down up Fossgate. I think that'd be kind of a nice way to go. So maybe we've got a period of depopulation in the 5th and 6th century. Could have been to do with catastrophic flooding. So there's this issue, flooding really is just sort of baked into York, really. There's nothing you can do about it. It totally is impacted by the fact that when the Romans came up here to settle, the Romans came up from Lincoln, they weren't really planning on stopping or staying for any great period of time. They were merely here to kind of quell the rebellion that had been kind of breaking out with the Brigantes sort of tribe. So consequently, when they built a fortress here, a temporary wooden fortress, they weren't giving a lot of thought to the fact that position between the two rivers of the Foss and the Ouse on this kind of very low-lying area, which is scarcely above sea level, that they were condemning the city to have this terrible legacy of flooding. It just didn't really occur to them because, as I say, so we're just another shortcut. Yes, we'll walk towards Shambles, Elizabeth, on our way. We're going over that way. I just was trying to get our way through the crowd, so we're back out now. I thought we'll go through Merchant Taylors if it's open, up Fossgate, into Shambles, and we'll go around that way. Have they finished the clean and repair of the Minster? Well, we'll no doubt have a look while we're there. But as I say, if there was a big flood in that period, no evidence has been found of it. So again, this is all you can ever really do from an archaeological point of view, is say, at this point, no evidence has been found. So again, you'd expect to find movement. Is it alluvial soils? They call them, when you have sort of flood events, soils move, minerals move, so you get these kind of distinctive sort of swirly patterns within sort of silt and kind of earth that moves. So again, archaeologists are able to kind of dig down and say with some kind of certainty, really, what's kind of gone on. So I say, if there was a flood that depopulated the city, there's no evidence. So let's see if we can get through the gardens of the beautiful Merchant Adventurers Hall. Just a sip of water. So again, we're going down steps. So we're going down towards the contemporary medieval street level of the city. So obviously, we can see as we're kind of coming along here. So again, compare contemporary street level, medieval street level, kind of where we are here. And then take note, sorry, I didn't mean to film you there, that in order to get into the Merchant Adventurers Hall, you're stepping down further still. It does show that we've got a very substantial differentiation between the flooding that we experience now and flooding we would have got in the medieval period. So it's worth kind of bearing in mind that York now is in effect the city on stilts that we've kind of adapted ourselves around it. This building, Tricia, is the Merchant Adventurers Hall. It is the hall of the Merchant Adventurers Guild, and the Merchant Adventurers, where we get them venture capital from. It was built into shipping, merch, if you like, buying, selling, filling ships, trading around the world. And this was their HQ here in York. So it kind of doubled up as being a kind of business centre, a social place, but also where merchant adventurers from around the world, when they came in to York, they could kind of rock up here and find people, do you know what I mean, with similar kind of business interests and so forth. So in terms of thinking about then this sort of population of the city, 5th, 6th century, rather than there kind of being this event flood that maybe got rid of people, it's more kind of likely that people found themselves at a bit of a loss. Almost what's York for? Post-Romans, because obviously it'd be this massive colonial capital in the Roman era, a bit like, many of you will live near a place like a post-industrial, whether you're in the kind of Rust Belt of America or you're in kind of South Yorkshire, coal mines, wherever it may be. A lot of places kind of arise, don't they? Do you know what I mean? And they've got the Electric Theatre, by the way, this one. York's first purpose-built cinema, when they were kind of competing with theatre. So that sense of what's a place for when its place of sense of purpose has gone. So it's kind of likely that York was sort of in that mould, really, post the Roman Empire. Kind of gone to the army and its support structures, but also with them trade, industry, record keeping, the knowledge of how to maintain fresh water, hot water, flushing toilets. What have the Romans ever done for us? All that. A lot is the answer. And so people kind of, it would seem, sort of dispersed from the city to live on estates, live in the countryside to farm, and to kind of live in places where it was easier to gain food, because obviously the infrastructure to bring food to marketplaces had sort of fallen away because there was no demand from the troops. While the troops were here, people always had to bring supplies. Having the Roman army here meant that there were people who were getting paid every month with gold coins. They had the money that wanted everything from pen and paper to write home, female company, gambling, wine, food, lodgings, comforts, warm clothing because it's bloody cold up here, all these other things. So you imagine that all that affluent customer base moves, so too do the traders. They go elsewhere, they go to London, they go to Norwich, they go to wherever. So the whole thing kind of collapses, really, and it's about how does kind of York start again, rebuild from that point onwards. So we are just crossing the road so I don't get run over. We are on Whitmore Gate, or at the bottom of Whitmore Gate and Collier Gate, and we'll kind of walk through the passageway and I see if we've got to tackle the shambles. I've no idea how busy it is. Hello, Tish. How busy it's going to be, but hopefully you're finding this a nice diversion, whatever it was that you're doing today. And it's good to see the shambles. So we've got some good tour going on here, so I'll just be quiet as we walk through. So this is obviously one of York's stickleways in between the two. So I'll just whip through. Excuse me. Thank you. So I think it's good courtesy not to interrupt people's tours. We're all trying to rub along later. So yeah, so after kind of centuries of being this important seat of power, perhaps local leaders might continue it. Maybe York continues as a place of governance. It's certainly happening in other major towns, but we just don't know. And it's kind of fascinating because we know so much about York, but this 300-year period, we really just don't kind of know. We know that the Roman Basilica, which was the fortress capital under the Minster, was altered around the late 4th century, and it could be that this was sort of repurposing and providing amenities for the remaining population, or maybe a new power base had taken it over. Who knows? Some have suggested that York operated as a capital of an independent kingdom named as Ebroic from 470. And Welsh genealogy has kind of led to this, chronicling the kings of Wales laying claim to this part of England. But we just don't know. What we do know is that it would have retained some Roman grandeur. So obviously what we're looking at here is medieval. Although, of course, the street pattern, the alleys, the throughways, and so forth, will to a large degree have emerged in the kind of Roman period. But the Shambles is most definitely a medieval kind of route. Still serving mincemeat, indeed. So, and of course, mincemeat historically was meat. It was anything that was a pie or a pudding was almost always savoury. So black pudding, of course, is the big hangover of that in our kind of culture that we've kind of still got. But yeah, so puddings and sweetmeats were absolutely the norm. So it's looking lovely. It is a shambles. So what we do know is that Anglo-Saxons were living around York, and by the kind of late 400s, they were firmly established. And again, how do we know this? Well, cemetery remains. So again, thinking about what it is that we can find to derive, when we haven't got kind of written records, but one of them, of course, is mortuary remains. So by doing excavations on graveyards, obviously that gives us a big insight, a clue, if we like, or clues for those that are educated that can understand kind of what it is that they're looking at, of the people that were living here, and of course, critically, the time that we're talking about. So there is definitely people living here, but it's only really from about kind of 600 numbers of people that were kind of approaching back into kind of city status. Still getting a little bit of blue light there. I know Tish is a big fan of the blue light. My son's girlfriend now attending York University, keeping an eye out for the streets. Okay, well, you let us know, Polly. We'll all keep them peeled, but you need to give a description, data protection notwithstanding, as to what. Is she tall, blonde, brunette, auburn, redhead? You tell us, and we can at least have some measure of knowing what it is that we're looking for. Isn't it nice? So it's not quite as manically busy as I thought it might be. Tish is in a happy place. We're in the Shambles. We've got blue. So it's all good. So sorry about that. Let's just have a little dawdle. And so what we know is that during this kind of period, what we don't have is in England. So ideas about Kings of England, we start, this is I'm still deviating from my Kings of England, in case you're wondering where I'm kind of going from this, or how we start. How the hell did we get here? We were talking about Kings of England. So when we start thinking about, Kings of England from 1066, I sort of get what they're talking about, but they're still wrong. Insofar as that you have to have an England in order to be king of it. And in the period that we're talking about it, your little devil is on Stonegate, it's not the Shambles. So sadly, you could look all day long and you're not going to find it. Potions Cauldron here. And no doubt we're going to encounter some ghosts. So it's getting kind of busy. But we can have a wander down Stonegate, should you wish it. But I think we'll go via some of the back alleys because it's kind of busy. And I'm trying not to film people against their will. Quick little look at the ghosts while we are here. Always a popular attraction and always a queue. And again, I'll not film those folk, but sorry, I do beg your pardon. Can I just get through there? It's a pretty much a fixture now of that once it was slurry and all manner of rubbish that ran through the centre of the shambles. Now it's lovely folk that queue up to visit the ghosts. So it is now an absolute feature. And you see how nice it was at the end there? Where I could have actually gone with that. You're smiling but not saying anything. So yeah, we've got lovely people now, but at one time, goodness me, this would have been a mess. Because of course this was the street of the butchers, and so all manner of blood and offal and animal manure, all manner of kind of nastiness would have all been the order of the day. And of course you've got chimney pots being emptied from top windows, so not a great place to be. But altogether nicer these days. So there you go, another glimpse of the shambles in the blue light as I take a sip. And then we'll have a little wander on. And I think if we go, I know where we'll go. Making this up as we go along. Thank you. So yeah, so we haven't got England. What we've got is we've got 4 kingdoms. And a bonus point if anybody can mention any of the 4 kingdoms of what we now call as England. I'll give you a second to come up with those. We'll walk through King's Square. And King's Square, known as King's Square because it was the location of the palace of the Viking kings, about whom we're going to talk about in just a moment. So I'll give you another moment. If anyone wants to come up with any one of the 4 kingdoms that made up this country. So we had 4 separate kings, 4 entities, and have we got anybody that's on the button or could be bothered to type in any of them? If not, I'll put you in misery. And we'll go through this in a second. So we're coming into Petergate, named Wessex. Leslie's got one. So Leslie lives in Wessex, although probably not far away from the border also of East Anglia, which certainly cut right down into Essex, so not too far away from where you are in North East London. Kent, no. So we've got Wessex, East Anglia, Mercia and Northumbria, and obviously those then broke into small areas. So Kent is an example of that. So up here we were in part of Deira and Bernica. There were smaller sort of states within those, but they were the 4 kind of major kingdoms. Northumbria, so yeah, you've got 2 of them, and Northumbria of course means literally north of the Humber. So anything really kind of north of the Humber estuary, up to the Scots borders would have been Northumbria, to Northumbria, and we're right now. This is the capital of Northumbria. So that was kind of how Christianity got established, was the basis of those. That's it. Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia and Wessex. Bang on the nail there, Cheryl. So we'll not ask whether you Googled that. We'll just say thank you for your contribution. But you're absolutely 100% correct. That's the 4 kingdoms we're kind of talking about. And if you've seen or read the Bernard Cornwell, the Uhtred books, or seen the TV show, my wife rather likes the dishy star that plays Uhtred of Bamborough up in Northumberland. The last kingdom is, of course, Kingdom of Northumbria, which was the last kingdom to succumb to being part. We were not keen on this idea of England. East Anglia, I see now, yes. So we're going back a bit further. You're absolutely right. And Boudica, you're 100% right there. Leslie and Susan, that's a little bit earlier we're talking about there. That's talking about during the period of kind of Roman conquest and settlement. Those were kind of rebellions. The Iceni led against the Romans. That was definitely what the Romans ever done for us. But we're talking about now the kind of post-Roman period. So those tribes had given way and had been replaced. So the York settlement was called, you may have heard this one, Eforwic. So you've heard of Jorvik. So it's obviously the root of the same word, to Eforwic, a place of some significance, because the Wicks were seemingly the most important commercial centres in the kingdoms. So London Vic was called London Wick. Do you know that, Leslie? It used to be called London Vic, spelled Lundenwic. London Wick. So perhaps Hackney Wick, which I suspect isn't too far away from you, would have had some original connection to that. Maybe that was a kind of major population centre. I don't know. Ipswich was Ipswich. So Ipswich. So there's the Wick. So if you come across a Wick, it means a place of large settlement. So there you go. The stuff that I share with you on these tours. So we're in Grape Lane. Uhtred was, wasn't he? I don't know the name of that actor, but Mrs. John would get a bit swoon-worthy. And she's like, have we seen this episode? Oh, let's watch it again. I thought, yeah. Is it one where he strips to the waist, any chance? But, once you've been married for a long time, you have to accept, don't you, that there's a little bit of that. No idea. Okay. So let's spin and looking lovely in the lights, I'm thinking. So York Scholar Alcuin, any alumni of York University will know that Alcuin is named after one of the colleges is named after Alcuin. And giving you some more sneakaway action here. Getting you away from the crowds. Is Marlene on? Hi, Marlene. So Alcuin but he's a remarkable guy. He sort of studied under Paul Linus here at York at St Peter's School, which is the 4th oldest school in the world, based here in York still. And Schweingate, another German, Schwein, pork, pig, Schweingate. So Anglo-Saxon roots there coming through. Mulberry, you like Mulberry, do we, Laurie? Very expensive, it was deep pockets, or maybe just deep desires. Barley Hall, looks like it's in the dark, so I can't show you much. I think a little bit. Actually, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Hi, Marlena. Always a delight to have you on. Well, we've been here before, lots of times, but I'm just trying to keep us away from the crowds, really, because it gets a bit much, doesn't it? And of course, they're all rotten 4G thieves. Every one of them, you can look at them. Alexander Dremon, was that his name, was he? He certainly made Mrs. John's list. Oh, look, we've got those back. Remember we came last year? We'll have to come and do a separate tour. We'll find them. Alcuin, he described his hometown as an emporium, a seat of commerce by land and sea. So that's York, obviously, he's talking about there. Another writer mentions of a colony of international merchants living in or near the city. So, clearly by Alcuin's time, that's the early 8th century. And Alcuin, by the way, goes on to, I'm sure that's what's kind of known as the First Renaissance. So Renaissance kind of starts around 800 AD, the first kind of real embrace of learning, of literacy, of language. So rejecting this period of the Dark Ages that we kind of talked about a little bit earlier. Sorry, guys, do come through. And coming into the light. The immersion into the light kind of starts really across Europe with kind of Charlemagne. And Alcuin is his kind of cultural advisor. So he's kind of a very significant guy. And he was a teacher here in York. So the Roman gateways and pathways, so stone gates. So there's, Laurie was saying, where's your favourite printer? Your devil. He's just there. So these street pathways we're doing now, these are kind of Roman in origin. So the grid pattern that kind of runs up from the Minster, which is where the Basilica and the fortress was, up to Parliament Street, where another of the Roman gates was, we're still in effect using that kind of Roman structure to kind of orientate the city. They kind of crisscross, but obviously as the kind of buildings fall away, the Roman buildings, the thoroughfares continued to be used. So you've still got a kind of really nice little kind of grid pattern, but you haven't got obviously Roman buildings. You don't like go to Rome or Nîmes or somewhere in France where we've obviously got extant Roman buildings. There isn't much of that at all in here in York. It's much more medieval and Georgian. But of course, what we've got is the grid pattern. We'll do a Roman tour one day. But to see what we didn't do the other week, because I wasn't very well, I've had a painful knee, by the way. I damaged the meniscus on my knee. I don't know if anyone knew who's done it, but it's not nice. I've been on strong painkillers, so we didn't get out for Halloween or Guy Fawkes, because I could barely walk, which means that we didn't do our ghost stories. But I thought it doesn't have to be Halloween, does it? Those of you, I'm sure, if you haven't, I'll not spoil it, but one of my favourite stories is the story here. If I remember tell you about the little girl with the long blonde hair, I'm sure Marion knows, of course, being a health professional, meniscus, nasty things, knees. Unfortunately, I damaged my knee many years ago in a motorbike accident, and this was the other one. So normally I get kind of winter twinges in one knee. This year I got them in the other. So I wasn't really able to walk very much. So consequently, it kind of paid to much kind of touring for the last 3 weeks. But nonetheless, we can still go out and do a ghost tour. It doesn't need to be Halloween, does it, to be a ghost tour? It needs to be dark. So I think we'll get on the scheduled in the next week or two. So that'll be good. Right, so what were we talking about? Yes, so kind of Anglican churches, obviously, the major one, and of course, unfortunately, we've got some scaffolding up front of it now, is the Minster. And of course, this emerges or begins to emerge in not its present form, but in location in the year kind of 621. Well, I had a number of bikes, but the actual bike it came off and did my knee in was a small one, an RXS 100 Yamaha that I was learning to ride on. And unfortunately, I was trying to see how fast it'd go on a new road. I hadn't opened yet, the outer ring road of York. And so I was going kind of flat out. But then I found out, to my peril, the road wasn't finished. Suddenly the surfacing stopped. It dropped about 3 levels. I tried to brake, my back brake locked on. Then I hit a big pile of sand. And I went one way, the bike went the other. And I just smashed the speeder off with my knee, which was lovely. So there's a triangular section of glass in my knee. And broke my leg. So that wasn't kind of great. But didn't put me off biking. But it has left me with a bad, nasty knee. So we've had a major Anglican church here since the year 627. And again, we'll go back to the archaeological record. We were talking about, obviously, kind of digs. One of the kind of nice things is the Anglo-Saxon helmet that was discovered here in York. That dates to about 750, 775. I was on Way to See a Girl, actually. I was 18, Laurie, so too long. 1980s. That's kind of, isn't that beautiful? So, this is evidence of the settlement that was here from about sort of 700 to 850. And kind of lived down by the junctions of the Ouse and the Foss. We know that there was kind of a bunch of timber buildings around there. And again, there's so I'm trying to get rid of that now. Okay. The sort of bits and pieces of the timber buildings are left, but of course you're only getting the sort of tiny footings really, within the kind of archaeology. But we know the kind of size of them. And there's also been found, of course, through the archaeology again, sort of ditches, rubbish piles, wells, latrines. We've, of course, got the famous Viking turd. If you've never seen that, do have a look. On the Lloyds Bank turd is possibly the kind of largest item of human detritus that has ever been kind of found in archaeology. And it's here in York at the Viking Centre. And it is very, very impressive. Lorry crashed a moped in 1984. Must be something about the 80s. And low powered. So, I went on to ride much, much more powerful, up to including a Fireblade, but which is CBR 900. And for those that aren't aware, VFR 750, which wasn't really a racing bike, it was a very nice bike. But yeah, little one I came off on. So yeah, lots of ditches, rubbish piles, wells, latrines, those sort of things that you kind of find that again form part of the archaeological record. That tell us, even though we haven't got sort of written records, but of course the big arrival of the church is the beginnings again of record keeping. So you've got the Romans that are fanatical about keeping records, and then you've got obviously the Romans. And so why did the Romans come here? I mean, I've talked about this kind of before, and the kind of the leading sort of thinking really is because the Romans had created York as the capital of Britannia Inferior, one of two kind of nation states, if you like, on these islands under the Roman Empire. That when Pope Gregory at the beginning of the 7th century got out the maps to say, right, we're going to kind of bring back these British Isles to within Christendom, in other words, to bring it back within the Christian kingdom rather than kind of the pagan kingdoms, that he looked at his map and he saw kind of Londinium when he saw York, Iberacum. So that's certainly 1%. The other might be simply the roads led here, and the roads were so kind of few and far between. It made sense to kind of send people to go where we could actually get to. So either way, it's the influence of York having been the kind of the major Roman city that then influences the church to make it the kind of basis from which they're then going to try and embed Christianity and have it kind of percolate kind of outwards. So consequently, that's kind of what happens. And in the year 627, as we know, King Edwin of Northumbria wants to marry the daughter of the King of Kent. So going back to what we were saying a little bit earlier about kingdoms. So Kent definitely had its own king. So you're right on the money there, Leslie. Which wasn't one of the 4 major kingdoms. And in order, because the kingdom of Kent was a Christian kingdom, there was no way that the daughter, the princess, the heiress, was going to get married to a pagan. So on Easter Day in the year 627, we've got King Edwin gets converted to Christianity, takes communion here on this site, and then gets married. And the service is conducted by Paul Linus. Now, I've got a picture here, I say a picture, in the Minster glass of a lot of images. I hope there's not been too many. So it could be apocryphal, this, but you've got Pope Gregory on the left, you've got Paul Linus, sorry, Pope Gregory on the right, Paul Linus on the left, and is it Columba or St. Augustine? I'm not quite sure who it is there in the middle. So that meeting may or may not have happened, but it's kind of signifying the big kind of Christian missionaries. So St. Augustine went to Kent, obviously Canterbury became the focal point of Christianity in the south and the east of England. York became the focal point of the north. So there's Paul Linus. So Paul Linus conducted the service. We'll take that off. We didn't actually have an archbishop until the Normans came over, and William appointed his half-brother Odo, was our first archbishop here. But of course there were bishops. Isn't that looking lovely in that light? Liking that. So kind of York converted to Christianity, and I suppose that really is the beginning of the kind of the modern sort of story, really. I mean, we had a bishopric here since the 4th century that's established under Constantine, but obviously there wasn't a substantial Christian presence. So I'll just see if we can get through the Minster Gardens. See if we can find Paddington. I'm not sure if this will be locked, so I may have to turn around and come back this very way. But if not, I'll hold that up there. It's making my arm ache, but it looks kind of cool. So I don't kind of mind. I'll put up with a little bit of discomfort for my art. I'll suffer for my art. Getting nervous on the open flames. That's lovely, isn't it? Yeah. That's a lovely shot. So we've got a real kind of nice sky as well. And again, the sky seems sort of slightly full of portent, but something very comforting, isn't there, about blue light in the background, but gorgeous yellow, orange light in the foreground. Shows you when you'll be inside and cosy and warm. And basically everything that I'm not right now, because my hands are cold. But I'm enjoying myself, so don't worry about it. And what we've got? We've got another... Oh gosh, we're nearly on time. So it's another 5 minutes. So let's go and finish up. If we can find Paddington for you. So don't believe that I've taken you to see Paddington, have I? On this tour. Which is my bad, as they might say. But... I just found somebody's hat there, so I'm going to be charitable. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Anne. It's good here. And we found a hat, so I'm going to put it on the railing there. So anybody coming back, hopefully, can see that. So if you're watching, that's where your hat is. So, as I say, Paul Linus came. It was his job to kind of really embed and instill kind of the Christian faith here, create a church, clerics, and so forth. So, we've got then the beginnings. I think it may actually be shut. So we may have to... we'll see if this goes home. If it's locked, it's locked. There's still folk in there, but it's hard to know. Because obviously they'll lock one end and not the other. Pedestrians, please use the other footpath. No, there wasn't an other footpath. So I don't think we can... Oh, can we get it down there? It might allow us to get it down there. Whip worm eggs. Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously by studying poo, they could find out a great deal about all sorts of things, from kind of gut parasites to diet. It sort of sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But actually, it's an incredibly rich resource of understanding, of kind of bringing the Vikings into kind of 3D, as you might say, of understanding them as kind of people rather than kind of... And we've got the Viking Festival coming up in February, haven't we? So we'll do a tour about Vikings. Around that time, we'll talk about them because I can't deal with them in passing because they're kind of so important and so fascinating to me. So we're just doing this sort of period pre-Viking, aren't we? Let's go and find Paddington for you before we wrap up. We'll walk this way past the War Memorial, looking lovely. So the king, as I say, he'd been had to convert in order to get this kind of marriage over the line. And so by marrying the King of Kent's daughter, because they were kind of vassal state of Wessex, it brought a unification between Wessex and Northumbria. So it wasn't simply kind of love match. It was about kind of securing a legacy as well, as you might say. So we've got the church built initially on this site in wood, but it's then rebuilt in. So you didn't know we would learn about that today, did you, John? No, I didn't. There we go. Oh, thank you, Cheryl. That's very kind of you. So we'll just go past the memorial. She's looking lovely. So yeah, then funnily enough, Paul Linus went down to Kent with Edwin's queen, and then James the Deacon took over, another famous figure. It's looking lovely. So this is the War Memorial, one of the War Memorials here in York. Looking very beautiful, lit up. When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow we gave our today, which is a very moving sentiment. So yeah, that's really the kind of the beginnings of the formation. But actually under James the Deacon, the focal point of the faith moved north up to, and you get this royal power as well. So York ceased to become the capital. Bamburgh becomes the big castle up in there in the northeast, in Northumbria, and the very nearby Lindisfarne becomes the number one seat. Durham Cathedral becomes very, very important because of St Cuthbert's kind of remains. So the whole axis of power shifts into the northeast, and you've kind of got York does become re-established its bishopric after the Synod of Whitby in 664, I think it is, isn't it? But really kind of through the next period until the Vikings come along, we'll save that for another day, another story, York kind of loses its focal point as the centre point of the region. I'd say it's overtaken by the Kingdom of Northumbria's base, which shifts and locates up to the northeast. Probably, I think I saw Fiona W on here. How far are we? About 80 miles from Lindisfarne to York? 90 miles maybe? Somewhere in that kind of region. But of course, as we know, the Viking raids of Lindisfarne is the beginnings of the Viking Age and the kind of the next chapter in our story. So we're perhaps as well to stop there. We've done our hour, which is what I promised. We've ended up in front of the Minster, which is a nice place to start. And we've got a little glimpse of some Christmas lights. So I think that you've had a decent bit of history there and views to your money. Hopefully we've stayed out for the most part of People's Way. Look at that. About 90, yeah, Fiona, I think. So Fiona, of course, Alison's sister, living up in that beautiful part of the world, as is Jen, if she's on, a former school colleague, up that way in beautiful Northumbria, stunning part of the world. But I'll say the axis of power shifts. So Bamburgh Castle, Lindisfarne, kind of take over from York as being the seat of royal power and the seat of religious significance as well. So we'll pick up that story again. We talk about the Vikings, the Viking raids of Lindisfarne, and how this idea of a state first kind of coined under Alfred the Great, but not actually brought in really till probably his great-grandson was on the throne. This idea of a place called England, a nation that is forged as much in a unified resistance to the Vikings as it is actually about a desire to have one unifying identity. But all that's to come. So I do hope that you enjoyed today. I've certainly enjoyed having a natter. My hands are definitely cold after an hour without gloves, because you can't have gloves and and be doing the screen backwards and forwards. So I've enjoyed it. It's been an absolute delight, and it's been a pleasure to see you. And I'm going to be doing more regularly. So I look forward to seeing you jolly soon. So thank you from York, everybody, wherever you are. Thank you. Goodbye. Give me a follow if you're not doing on the channel. And I'm going to do my best to make people more aware of stuff that's on YouTube, some vintage stuff, perhaps some watch parties, for those that would like to, as we're coming to these darker nights you're staying in. And we'll perhaps refresh some of the gems we've not seen for a while, and we'll get a bit more value out of them. So there we go. So lovely to see you all, and see you soon. Bye-bye.